Welcome to Simpler Bible, a daily journey to biblical understanding. Elijah is still cool. He has lived by a river. He's been fed by the ravens. He's been provided for by a widow and her son. He has raised that widow's son from the dead. And now after 3.5 years, here's where we are. You ready? This is 1 Kings chapter 18, beginning in verse 1. After many days, the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, "Go and show yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth." So Elijah went down to show himself to Ahab. Now the famine was severe in Samaria. So Samaria, I'll say this a few times. Samaria is the capital city of the northern kingdom, Israel. And it's also sometimes called Ephraim because the kings came from the line of Ephraim. So all those will be used interchangeably, primarily in the prophets. But I do find this language funny. Go and show yourself to Ahab. It's like, hey, Ahab, like here I am. Anyway, and that's kind of what he does. So Ahab called Obadiah, who was over the household. Now Obadiah feared the Lord greatly. And when Jezebel had cut off the prophets of the Lord, killed the prophets of the Lord, Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50s in the cave and fed them with bread and water. So he had taken care of them during the time of the famine. Ahab said to Obadiah, "Go throughout the land to all the springs of water, to all the valleys. Perhaps we may find enough grass and save the horses and mules alive and not lose some of the animals." So they divided the land between them to pass through it. Ahab went in one direction by himself, and Obadiah went in the other direction by himself. And as Obadiah was on his way, behold, Elijah met him. And Obadiah recognized him and fell on his face and says, "Is it you, my lord Elijah?" And he said, "Yes, it is I. Go and tell your lord, behold, Elijah is here." So go tell Ahab, Elijah is here. And he said, "How have I sinned that you would give your servant into the hands of Ahab to kill me? As the Lord your God lives, there is no nation or kingdom where my Lord is not sent to seek you." And when they would say he's not here, he would take an oath of the kingdom or nation that they had not found you. And now you say, "Go tell your Lord, behold, Elijah is here." As soon as I've gone from you, the Spirit of the Lord will carry you to I know not where, which is a really crazy thing that apparently happens. And happens, we see even, we'll see it here in a couple of chapters as well, but also happens in Acts. So when I come and tell Ahab and he can't find you, he'll kill me, although I, your servant, have feared the Lord from my youth. Has it not been told you, my Lord, what I did when Jezebel killed all the prophets of the Lord? How I hid 100 men of the Lord's prophets by 50s in a cave and fed them with bread and water? And now you say, "Go tell your Lord, behold, Elijah is here, and now he will kill me." Elijah said, "As the Lord of hosts lives, before whom I stand, I will surely show myself to him today." So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went out to meet Elijah. When Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said, "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" And Elijah answered, "I have not troubled Israel, but you have, and your father's house, because you have abandoned the commandments of the Lord, and you have followed the Baals. Now therefore send and gather all of Israel to me at Mount Carmel, and the prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah, those who eat and dine at Jezebel's table." Pet peeve here, I don't know if it's a big deal or not. It's not a big deal. It's absolutely not a big deal. It's Mount Carmel, not Mount Caramel, all right? One of those is Candyland. One of those is the Bible. So just keep that in mind, okay? Thank you. Even got a chuckle out of Colin for that one. So hopefully you enjoy that too. But verse 20. So Ahab sent to all the people of Israel and gathered the prophets together at Mount Carmel. And Elijah came near to all the people and said, "How long," and this is such a great exchange, "how long will you waver or go limping between the two different opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal, then follow him." He says, how long will you be divided for Baal and for the Lord? And you're limping between these two opinions. You're wavering between these two opinions. And the people did not answer him a word. This is how cowardly they are, right? Jezebel and Ahab have led them into all sorts of sin. They don't even answer Elijah a word. So then Elijah said to the people, even I only am left as a prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are men. Let 2 bulls be given to us, and let them choose 1 bull for themselves and cut it in pieces and lay it on the wood and put no fire to it. And I will prepare the other bull and lay it on wood and put no fire to it. Then you call upon the name of your God, and I will call upon the name of the Lord, and the God who answers by fire, he is God. And the people said, "It's well spoken," right? Everybody likes a contest. So what Elijah says is, you take your 450 prophets, I'll take myself. You guys pick which bull you want. I'll take the other bull. We'll build altars. We'll cut up our bulls. We'll put them on the altar. Whoever's God burns up the bull first wins. And the people go, "Love it. Sounds great. Let's make a day of it." So Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose for yourselves one bull and prepare it first, for you are many. Call upon the name of your God, but put no fire to it. And they took the bull that was given to them, and they prepared it and called upon the name of Baal from morning until noon, saying, O Baal, answer us. But there was no voice, and no one answered, and they limped around the altar that they had made. At noon, Elijah mocked them and said, He's God. Either he is musing or he's relieving himself, or he's on a journey, or perhaps he's asleep and he must be wakened. And so he is criticizing them hardcore here. Anyway, we'll get to it. Listen to this. And they cried aloud and cut themselves after their custom with swords and lances until the blood gushed out. As midday passed, they raved on until the time of the morning, the offering of the oblation, but there was no voice, no one answered, and no one paid attention. Now, this is interesting, right? So he's mocking them, he's criticizing them. He's like, hey, maybe you need to be a little bit louder. Maybe your God's asleep. Maybe he's on vacation. Maybe he's in the bathroom. Like he's ridiculing them. And so they call out all the louder. They cut themselves with spears and swords, and they're bleeding everywhere, calling out to Baal. They do this for like the whole day, from early in the morning till late in the evening, till it's time for the evening sacrifice. And then listen to Elijah's. Now remember, it hasn't rained in 3.5 years. Then Elijah, this is verse 30, said to all the people, come near to me. And they came near to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord that had been thrown down. Elijah took 12 stones, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord came, saying, Israel shall be your name. And the stones which he built an altar, and with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord. He made a trench around the altar as great as would contain 2 seahs of seed. And he put the wood in order and cut the bull in pieces and laid it on the wood. And then he said, fill 4 jars with water and pour it on the burnt offering in the wood. And he said, do it a second time. And then he said, do it a third time. So they pour 12 jars of water over this offering. And when they pour these 12 jars of water over this offering, I need you to understand that this isn't just a mic drop kind of moment, like where he's like, look, your God after 9 hours couldn't set the offering on fire. I'm going to soak my offering down. It's not just that. There has been a famine for 3.5 years. He is taking 12 jars of water. This is their life. Do you understand this, right? Like this is vital. And he is taking the water. I wonder how many people in the crowd, remember they've been out there all day. There's a famine in the land. People aren't there with their like water bottles, with all their cool stickers of all the places they've traveled to. Hey, I was at Bethel last week. Were you at Dan? Oh, I see. It's not like that. They're sitting there and he's gathering water and having it poured over this. And I just wonder how many of the people are out there like smacking their lips with their dry, cracked lips because they're in a drought. And so he does this 3 times, 12 jars of water dumped over the offering. The water ran down around the altar, filled the trench also with water. And at the time of the offering, of the evening offering, Elijah the prophet came near and said, and listen to what he says. Listen to how long this takes. O Lord, let's see. O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known this day that you are God in Israel, that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, that these people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have turned their hearts back. So that was 14 seconds. 450 prophets dancing around the altar of Baal for 9 hours. And Elijah gets out there and prays a 14-second prayer, reminding God, by the way, of the promise he had made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And it says, then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering and the wood and the stones and the dust and licked up all the water that was in the trench. And when the people saw it, they fell on their faces and they said, the Lord, he is God, the Lord, he is God. Remember, 9 hours earlier, they were unwilling to make the statement who they were going to follow. And now they're like, man, the Lord, he's God. So Elijah said to them, seize the prophets of Baal, let not one of them escape. And they seized them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon, and he slaughtered them there. So he puts to death these false prophets. Elijah said to Ahab, go up and eat and drink, for there is the sound of a rushing rain. So Ahab went up to eat and drink, and Elijah went up on top of Mount Carmel, and he bowed himself down to the earth and put his face between his knees. And he said to his servants, go up now, look towards the sea. And when he went and he looked, he said, there's nothing. And he said, go again. 7 times this happened. And the 7th time he said, behold, there is a little cloud the size of a man's fist rising up from the sea. And he said, go up and say to Ahab, prepare your chariot and go down, lest the rain stop you. And in a little while the heavens grew black with clouds and wind, and there was a great rain. And Ahab rode and went to Jezreel. And the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he gathered up his garments, and he ran before Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. So Ahab's in his chariot and Elijah's like outrunning him. And that's hilarious to me. So Ahab tells Jezebel, chapter 19 now, all that Elijah had done and how he had killed the prophets with the sword. And Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, may the gods do so more to me and also do more. Wow. May the gods do to me and more also if I do not make your life like one of the lives of my prophets tomorrow. In other words, she goes, you slaughtered my prophets. I'm going to put you to death. So then Elijah was afraid. He arose and he ran for his life. He came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and he left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, came and sat down under a broom tree, and he asked that he would die, saying, it is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers. And he lay down and he slept under the broom tree. And behold, an angel touched him and said to him, arise and eat. And he looked, and behold, there was at his head a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. And he ate and he drank, and he lay down again. Then the angel of the Lord came again a second time and touched him and said, arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you. So he arose and he ate and he drank, and he went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mount of God. Then he came to a cave and lodged in it. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? And Elijah said, I've been very jealous for the Lord, very passionate for the Lord God of hosts. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant. They have thrown down your altars. They have killed your prophets. And I am the only one left, and they seek my life as well. Now remember, he's not the only one left, right? He's already been told that there are at least 100 other prophets. And then he said, go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore the mountains and broke the pieces of the rock before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak, and he went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, there was a voice that said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? Same question twice. He said, I've been very jealous for the Lord, for the God of hosts, for the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant. They've thrown down your altars. They've killed your prophets. And I alone am left, and they seek to take away my life too. And the Lord said to him, go and return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus. And when you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael king over Assyria. These will be really important later. I'll remind you of them, though, so that you don't have to remember them right now. Anoint Jehu, the son of Nimshi, and appoint him to be king over Israel. And anoint Elisha, the son of Shaphat of Abel Meholah, and you shall anoint him to be prophet in your place. And the one who escapes the sword of Hazael shall Jehu put to death, and the one who escapes from Jehu shall Elisha put to death. Yet I have left for myself 7,000 in Israel, all the knees who have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. So he says, look, I've got 7,000 other people in this country who have not bowed to anyone but me. They're still serving me. And that sounds impressive. But what you need to know is at this point, Ahab's army is 700,000 people, which means 7,000 faithful people is only 1% of the army, which is less than 1% of the total population. It's like 0.5% of Israel is serving the Lord. And God says to Elijah, look, you're not alone. 0.5% of the people here still serve me. And I find that really interesting because I think what we want a lot of times as Christians is we want to see the masses faithful to the Lord. And what the Lord uses to encourage Elijah here, in fact, this will be mentioned in Romans 11. Let me make a note of that for you here. This will be mentioned in Romans 11. I'll put that in the blog as well. I think what ought to be encouraging to us isn't that the masses are turning to Jesus. I think what ought to be encouraging to us is that no matter where we go, there are people who are still faithful to the Lord. And sometimes it's going to be 0.5% of the population, but there are still people who are faithful. There are still people who are serving the Lord. And when the whole world turns against God, and when the whole world sets up altars to false gods, and when the whole world is seeking to put to death those who are faithful to God, the encouragement that we take is that even if it's 0.5%, even if it's 1% of the army, even if it's just 1% of the entire population, we're not alone. There are other people who are faithful to the Lord. So he departed from there and he found Elisha. Now remember, he's supposed to anoint these three people, Hazael, Jehu, and Elisha. He departed from there and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen in front of him, and he was with the 12th. And Elijah passed by him and cast his cloak upon him. And he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, let me kiss my father and my mother, and I will follow you. And he said, go back, for what have I done to you? And he returned from following him, and he took the yoke of oxen, sacrificed them, and boiled their flesh with the yokes of oxen, and gave it to the people, and they ate. And he arose and went after Elijah to assist him. Really quick two things about this text, and ask me more about it later. If you know me personally, talk to me more about this later, and a really cruddy experience that I had a long time ago with this text. But people will say, Elisha was really rich because he had 12 yoke of oxen. Listen, there was people plowing in the field, 12 yokes of oxen are plowing in the field, and Elisha is with the last pair. It's not implying that he owns all of these. It's not even implying that these are all what his parents own. And then what people do sometimes is they'll say, look, he cut up the yoke and he sacrificed the oxen because he didn't want to be tempted to go back to his rich home life. So he cut up all the yokes and he burned up all the oxen so that he wouldn't be tempted to go back to his home life and that he would be faithful to follow the Lord. That's not what the text is saying. Please, please, please don't add to the text. Please don't imply things that the text doesn't imply. Please don't make it. This is Elijah coming to Elisha and saying, follow me. And Elisha goes, done, I'm following you. And then he makes an offering to God to consecrate this moment. And so anyway, incredible story. I love the story of Elijah. And I will be back with you tomorrow in 1 Kings 21 and 22. Join me then for episode 136. Have a good day. Thank you so much for journeying with us today at Simpler Bible through another section of Scripture where we come to know and understand God a little bit better. Look, if you're brand new to Simpler Bible, we have all sorts of resources available for you. Go to our website, simplerbible.com, and there you can find these videos, you can find our podcast, you can find links to our social media, and you can even find a blog post with additional scriptures if you want to go into a little bit more study than we had time to cover in this podcast and video today. We hope that this tool will be exactly that for you, a tool. Not something that replaces your daily walk with God, but something that enhances your daily walk with God and helps you to know and enjoy Him more. Thank you so much for being part of this, and we'll see you again tomorrow.